Hi there. So what I'm going to do is do another Ask Andy, because I've had one or two more questions come in, and I've had this one come in from David, and he says he's just watched the latest instructive and entertaining video, yes, on photography, bird photography Zoom or Prime, in which I mentioned macro lenses. Yes, I duly did. And this reminded David of a question he's had for a while on the suitability of using macro lenses for general use, such as landscapes. I know they are often used for portraits, but are there technical constraints when used for non-macro purposes? Or maybe there are hidden artistic benefits for using them. Yes. ICM for a start, yeah. But anyway, that's another story. So I believe they tend to be slower in autofocusing. Is this a suitable topic for a new video? Yes, David, it is. I think it is anyway, because you're not the first person to ask me this question. So let's just contemplate a macro lens. Here is my one and only macro lens. This is an old Sigma 180. Causes a load of consternation when it's stuck on the front of a Nikon camera, because it says Sigma on the top, and when I take the lens hood off, yes, it says Canon. Yeah. But anyway, yeah, this is my old Sigma 180 EX. Oh God, what is it? EX DGHSM. Yeah. Damn good lens as a macro lens. Very, very, very good. White-faced darter dragonfly, juvenile. Let's go in and have a look at it at 100%. There's a little tiny bit of subject motion in that, and it just basically knocks it off being perfectly sharp. But as you can see, we've got cracking depth of field from the back of the head, and we've got all the wonderful hairs on the tail segments, and yeah, it does a great job. And you can see the sort of ripple effect on the various panels in the dragonfly's wings, which just goes to show how damn good the resolution of this lens is at macro distances. Let's go up to this one over here. This is a black darter, and we've shot this at f8, and we've gone for a point of view here that's sort of, if you're an insect, on the other side of the flower, and how sort of menacing and threatening one of these dragonflies could possibly be if you were a potential food item. Yes. And yeah, it's sharp where it needs to be, smack on the front of the, dare I say, nose of the dragonfly, smack on the front of its head, and we've got good resolution on the compound eyes, and then of course the depth of field falls off like a stone falling off a cliff, because it's shot at f8 and it's not a focus stack. But the thing is, macro lenses are very, very versatile, because we can use them in a very artistic way, for doing ICM, intentional camera movement, if that is what floats your boat, which I know it floats a lot of people's boats. It floats my boat as well, but I don't do it very often, which I suppose I should. But of course, they're great for doing traditional macro work. However, they're also good for product photography work, and this is shot with the same 180mm lens, high-speed flash, high-speed motion capture, liquid in motion, and yeah, I mean, gee whiz, it's as sharp as it needs to be. You don't really need it to be any sharper than that. Let's go and have a look at another one. Straightforward product photography shot, and this is unsharpened in Photoshop. This is just general capture sharpening placed over this TIFF file, and it's not really had anything else done to it. And you know, I mean, we've got all this wonderful detail in these bits of plastic cooking utensils. I was going to say cutlery then, but it isn't cutlery, is it? Because it's made of plastic. And loads of textural detail in there. And the only thing is, when you do this sort of work, mammoth amount of retouching, mammoth amount. But product photography. So there's another use for a macro lens. Now then, David was asking more specifically, pointing towards landscapes. And so what we'll do is we'll just skip over here momentarily to this shot, which is a raw file, as you can see. So there's no fancy Photoshop shenanigans going on with this shot. And fundamentally, this is just shot as a tester. And the farmhouse in the shot is, what, half a mile away? So when we're talking about a 180mm lens like this, half a mile isn't infinity. Not really. A lot of people think it is, and they are wrong. Infinity on a 180mm lens is going to be, what, 2.5, 3 kilometres away. So this is not at infinity. And I will tell you now that this level of focus on this farmhouse took me about 5 minutes to achieve. Because you've got to remember, you're outside in the elements, you can't really see your live view screen, and you can't really ask the lens to autofocus, because autofocus on a macro lens at this sort of distance has got pretty much zero accuracy. And, well, it has on that anyway. So, really and truly, getting this level of focus on this old dilapidated farm building was really difficult. Now, we've shot this at f11 on a 36 megapixel D800E. This lens is not at its peak performance at f11. It's more at its peak performance somewhere around f8, f10. f11 it starts to get a little bit soft through diffraction, and of course putting it on a 36 megapixel front side illuminated sensor will actually begin to show up that diffraction. And if I scoot along this image and come to the tree, now obviously you can't see this image like I can see it because of video compression, but some people might find that tree perfectly acceptable. From a big print or full resolution stock photography point of view, it isn't. Not in any way, shape or form. So I could shrink this down to a 1200 or even a 2000, 2500 pixel on the long edge JPEG, which is way bigger than you'd ever want to go on a website. And this would look perfectly sharp all over. And so what I want you to try and understand is that this topic that's been brought up by David, if you go and research it on the internet, you'll find all sorts of places on the internet where they say, oh yeah, look at this wonderful landscape I took with a whatever 90mm macro lens. And all they'll show you is a 720 by 480 JPEG. And you think, oh yes, I'll use a macro lens for my landscapes then, because that looks razor sharp. The only way you can tell if a lens is razor sharp or not is actually go and take a photograph and look at it at 100% on a decent non-retina display monitor, because retina display monitors make things look a little bit sharper than they really are. So fundamentally it's not perfect for landscapes. This isn't. I don't know where the shots are, they're somewhere on this machine, but I've also tried it with a Nikon 200mm macro and a Nikon 105 macro. Nikon 105 macros not too bad at focusing on infinity. The two examples of a Nikon 200mm that I've tried, 200mm macro, not brilliant. they're a little bit like this in the fact that when you get to the extreme far distances, they become difficult to focus, whereas obviously at extreme close distances, they are very easy to focus. Which, when you think of a lens such as this, a big 500mm, this is relatively easy to focus at long distance and can be a pain in the arse to focus at short distances. So if you can sort of get me drift, there is a bit of a trade-off depending on what type of lens you're using, and the trade-off comes at close distances with conventional telephotos, and conversely comes at long distances with macro lenses. They are just that little bit more time consuming to actually get a decent focus out at big long distances. And of course the distance this one's focused at, it's not really landscape distance. This one here is landscape distance, and to get this shot at, again, f11 on the old D800E, this had to be a focus stack. Let me just explain. If I look at the nearest object, that's sharp, but it's not quite in razor sharp focus. It's in one of those positions where it'll do. The actual point of focus is here, and we can see we've got some very good, very distinctive focus on this outcrop of pine trees here. But you'll notice how fast the background starts to fade away. Now, just to put this in context, this was shot on a very, very blustery day with the tripod right virtually flat on the ground, very windy, and it's at, oh god, here we go, now I'm going to have to try and pronounce a Welsh name. Llyn, I've got that bit right I think, Daiwarken, which I don't think I've got right, but I will actually put it up properly spelled. Now I'm on one side of of the lake, yeah, I'm not saying it again, and this little dilapidated crofting cottage is on the other side of the lake, so it's possibly around about a quarter of a mile away from me. The pine trees here are possibly another 500 yards behind the actual cottage. This intermediate background here is possibly 3/4 of a mile away, and this great big valley here is the sort of western combe of Snowdon. So these rocks here are at the bottom of Mount Snowdon, and if we go and have a look at those, I will tell you now, whoops-a-daisy, I will tell you now that that is as sharp as I could get those rocks with that lens. I could not get them any sharper, and to actually get that focus there took me possibly 5-6 minutes. And then of course, even at f11, this sort of intermediate background is not sharp, and so we had to take a second shot focused roughly here, which would give me probably the same amount of out of focus softness on this area here, but it would give me enough sort of depth of field to start to bring this crofting cottage in, because when you're being battered by wind you can't sit there and do an accurate focus stat, not really. So this is a blend of two shots, one focused here and one focused here, and the manual blend takes place with a brush in Photoshop, and it's done somewhere over here. And so it's a shot that will do, but it's not perfect. Now, the ideal lens to use for this would have been something like a 70-200 f4, or maybe Nikon's brand spanking new 70-200 f2.8, which I did have the pleasure of working with because I nicked one off one of my clients over in Norway for an afternoon. And yeah, spectacular lens, a lot better than the example that I've got, which is the previous iteration of the lens, which is very good in the middle but sort of wanders off towards the edges and the corners. But either way, with either the 70-200 f2.8, especially the new one, or the lighter weight 70-200 f4, I'm not going to stick my neck on the block and say I could have got this in one shot guaranteed. But the thing is, the 70-200 f4 on the Nikon D800E, I can actually get away with f14, f16 at a pinch. At a pinch. There will be a bit of diffraction on it, but I can run that through raw therapy and use RLD convolution sharpening to actually get rid of the little bit of diffraction. So it's sort of f14, f16, I could probably, with the 70-200 f4, have nailed a good focus, a slightly better focus on these background rocks, and got a comparative focus on this little crofter's cottage, which would have made the job an awful lot easier. So the thing is, I'm neither wealthy enough nor well connected enough to know how every macro lens behaves, but I've yet to find a macro lens that I can get hold of, or I have got hold of in the past, which is exceptionally good that far away from a scene and 2 miles away from a scene. No, there is always going to be a trade-off, and with macro lenses the trade-off tends to come when you try and focus it at or near infinity, and sometimes they just won't focus at infinity. They're incapable of rendering anywhere near a sharp image, or other times they are capable, but it is so finite, such a finite position on that focusing ring, that it's so easy to go a couple of microns past it or not get close enough, if you understand what I mean. The movement required is very, very small, and so between in focus and out of focus, and so fundamentally it takes you forever, which is not really what you want. So yes, you can use macro lenses for landscapes, certainly you can, this proves it, but the results might not be as good as a more conventional telephoto lens. So there you go, David. I hope that's answered your question. I hope that's proved interesting and useful for anyone else who's watching this video. All I will say though is this: whatever lens you've got, or lenses you've got, go out and test them. Go out deliberately. It gives you something to do when you're not going out taking pictures. Go out and take some test pictures. Go out and find yourself a scene where you've got close things and you've got things that are a mile away, 2 miles away. And if you live by the sea, try focusing on the place where the sea joins up with the sky. In other words, that funny little place in a shot known as the horizon. Try focusing on the horizon. If you can't focus on the horizon, don't use the lens for landscapes. If you can, use it, and it doesn't really matter whether it's a big macro lens, a small macro lens, or a non-macro lens. Not every lens is good at focusing at all distances, and macro lenses they fall well into that category. So just go out and test your gear. Doesn't take long to test, and then you'll know. Okay, so as I said before, I hope that's useful to you, and until the next time, I shall see you shortly. Tooroo.